Hey, it's Armando with Business by the Bar. Um, Today, we're going to talk about some metrics, and I am choosing JW Dant bottled in bond sour mash. Not a particularly high-end whiskey, but it's one that makes you question inherited wisdom, which is one of the things we're going to be talking about today. So let's get ourselves a little pour here, little nose. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of sour mash whiskey, so we're going to talk about some things I'm not a huge fan of in this episode. So that was a good choice, right? So listen, a couple years ago, I had an interview with Chris Peterson of the Vector Firm, and if you're looking for a sales consultant in the security industry, Vector Firm is where you go. All right. In that interview, he told me a story about a pot roast. And I haven't stopped thinking about it. It's been years, and I still think about this thing. So I've applied this thing to a sales metric that most of us inherited and nobody ever questioned. So let me tell you a little story behind this. I'll tell you the whole story that Chris told me and how it applies to your business. All right. So um, there's a woman teaching her daughter how to make a pot roast. And she's teaching her daughter the same way that she was taught by her mother. And that is that when you prep the pot roast, you cut the end off of this side, you cut the end off of this side, and then you make the pot roast. And it's this entire thing that you cut both sides of the pot roast in and you put it in, right? Her grandmother taught her mom this, her mom taught her this, and it's gone on and on and on and on. And in the process, the daughter asked, so why do we cut the ends off the pot roast? And her mom says, it's just how we've always done it. My mom taught me and her mom taught her. Well, it turns out that the reason they cut the ends off the pot roast is because the pot roast was too small, too big to fit in the oven in the 50s or the 40s or whenever that was. So we're in 2026. Ovens are a heck of a lot bigger. You don't have to cut the ends off the pot roast, so they're just throwing away meat. Now, nobody thought to question this through multiple generations until the daughter did when, why do we cut the ends off the pot roast, Mom? Well, 2 generations later, 3 generations later, the oven is bigger and the pot roast is still getting trimmed. Nobody remembers why. So most security company owners use a salesperson to revenue ratio that they inherited from somewhere. My guess is somewhere around 1965, somebody said a good salesperson generates 3 times their pay in revenue. That is hogwash. It means nothing in 2026. It meant nothing 15, 20 years ago, much less now. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but over the last few years, our market has changed considerably. You used to be able to buy really decent cameras for $100. You can't buy a connector for $100 nowadays. Well, you can, but I'm exaggerating. You get it, right? So this 3X rule, that's the pot roast of our industry. It's cut for an oven that doesn't exist anymore. There's way too many things that come into play in trying to determine how much a salesperson it needs to sell in order to compensate, in order to be a high performing salesperson. And that is the same, not the same for every company out there. So here's the big question behind this: is when did you last question a metric? This is how you spot your pot roast, right? Where did the number come from? Could you defend it if you had to put some math behind it today? The 3X rule makes no sense. Guys, our margin is nowhere near what it used to be 20 years ago. So you cannot operate on that. A salesperson needs to sell considerably more than 3 times their income just to break even. So here's how you break past this. You list every KPI that you track. Chances are you're tracking way more than you need to. There's a couple of the videos I've done about the 4 metrics. You really only need 4 things in your business, but I digress. Where did each one of these thresholds come from? Cross out anything that you can't defend. You don't need to measure it if you don't know why you're measuring it. Pretty simple, right? Now, within Security Owners Group, in the vault, which you get, I believe on tier 1 subscription, it's actually one of the early things you get, is what we call the 2 profit frameworks. This came from another interview I did with a guy named Brad Malone, who's a consultant in our industry and does fantastic work. So the 2 profits framework will replace most of the pot roasts that you're cutting, okay? And that right there will give you 20% more meat to start with. So the vault has the full essay. It also has the full framework on how to do all of this. And stop cutting the ends off your pot roast, guys. stop taking shitty advice. Cheers.